Welcome to Canucks After Dark. Here are your hosts, Parker Hallowell and Clay Emo.
Good evening, Vancouver, and welcome back to Canucks After Dark after a wonderful week of Canucks hockey that they didn't play a single game during. It is January 10th. As always, we're here on a Monday night at 10 p.m., and I am joined by my co-host, Canuck Clay. How are you doing today, Clay?
Parker, I'm doing well. I hope you are well as well. And I think this show might sound a little bit like last week's show, considering that the Canucks, yes, they went undefeated, but they also went winless this week, unfortunately.
Yeah, not a bad combo, I guess, and especially with the other results around the division. The week really didn't go that poorly for the Canucks, other than we had a game postponed that we were supposed to have on Saturday, the last home date. So there's going to be a bunch of home games during the so-called Olympic break coming up. But we have a big road trip to preview here. This is kind of could be a season-defining road trip, really, right? It's the Canucks haven't had tough opponents really yet, right? They had Boston, Carolina, right? Like a couple of decent teams, but they haven't had a run where they've had to go out night in, night out, take on these powerhouses in the East, where they are going to truly get tested over the next week and a half.
And it's crazy, by points, not points percentage, the next 5 opponents, they are in the top 6 spots in the NHL. If that's not a true litmus test or whatever it is, then I don't know what is. You know what's crazy though? Petey, he missed 2 games, but those were the 2 games postponed. So he technically didn't miss any Canucks games. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is a plus, definitely. And that should mean that it should help him stay off the list in the future, right? Get it out of the way now. That should be great. But we will see. So as we said, we're going to preview all 4 games this week. Maybe we'll touch on the 5th one that will be technically next week. Mm-hmm. A bit of news to talk about, as always. Should we just dive right into it?
Yeah, we got no games to recap, so I guess we might as well start previewing.
No games to recap. Well, we can recap the fun events of Friday when we were told that we weren't getting a game on Saturday.
Okay.
Which was I thought it wasn't good.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. Do you remember? And I think you and I don't think we talked about it on our show, but I know we were kind of messaging about it. It's weird because when they postponed the Wednesday one, you're kind of like, well, why are they still leaving the Saturday one kind of hanging out there? Well, okay, it's hockey night in Canada. It's even with half full. At least it's 2 Canadian teams, all good. And then you're right, on Friday, disappointing, but maybe not a surprise, eh?
Yeah, and I think the idea was that, well, the Senators are already doing this sort of road trip out here, right? They might as well come on and start it. And then it's kind of an interesting topic, right? Because we talk about postponing this game, likely done. From what I've heard at least, is it's usually at request of the home team. Right. And that's why the Maple Leafs are still playing games at home with no one in attendance with Ontario's protocols right now. And the Canucks have said, well, we want that revenue. We want a full house, not a 50% house. But that does mean you're giving up, a Saturday night game, sort of at the tail end of a holiday break, right? Not really the holidays, but there's still, people, you're going to get more people in here on a Saturday night in January than if you try to stick it on a Tuesday night in February. But the issue is the whole 50% capacity thing. Now for me, I mean, I'm looking ahead and it's like, okay, the Olympic break is what, a month away, right? We're talking probably 35 to 50 days away is when that game will be moved to.
Yes.
Is it going to be a full stadium in 35 to 50 days? Like,
maybe not.
That feels really optimistic in my eyes. And I mean, the NHL's up to, over 100 games have been postponed that they now have to all fit into this Olympic break, which is only, that's what, I think it's like 6 per team, isn't it? Because 2 teams got to play in each one.
Yeah, that's true.
That is a lot, right? That's a lot that they're going to have to fit in that time.
And it's crazy because when people who maybe aren't following the team as much and they'll ask you or they'll ask me, hey, why are they postponing the games? And you can explain kind of the revenue part, right? The 50% part, but then they will automatically, a casual fan will automatically assume it's COVID, but it is COVID. You can't separate them because the whole point of you can only have 50% is because of the provincial health order. And then there's also the worry of if you bring together even 50% of fans, God forbid that becomes a super spreader event. And now you're overloading or taxing our hospitals and everything. So yes, it is financial driven for sure, but I'm not saying you're doing this, but I'm saying that you can't separate the financial from the COVID aspect as well. And that's why we're in this situation.
Right. You have to wonder if they're looking at places like South Africa, for example, when they first had this variant and they burned out of it really quick, right? They had this big spike and then things settled down pretty quickly. And obviously we're a little earlier into it than South Africa was, but if a similar sort of pattern were to unfold and then we see things dip in about a month or so, that might happen just in time. But the fear is, if it doesn't, and maybe we're a couple more weeks in and, if hospitalizations go up a little bit more, maybe there's more restrictions, right? Maybe they get the opposite effect and they have no one in the building and things go the completely opposite direction. So it's a calculated risk that they're taking, moving it forward. The thought is, if we can get everyone in the building in a month and a half, that is better than having no one in the building today, which I mean is kind of fair. But I mean, it is just weird to me, right? Because there's also like the other side of it, which is like the broadcasters, because I've heard that people like ESPN are not loving this, right? Some of these games getting pushed. I'm sure Sportsnet, because lots of these are happening in Canada, right? They're like, oh, you're gonna push all of this into the Winter Olympics when we are putting all of our good content is on CBC and Sportsnet, like all the Olympic content. NBC is going to be running everything on the Winter Olympics down the States, and that's going to be directly competing with ESPN if they're trying to put hockey games on TV or whatever. So that's not good for ratings, right? It's not good for it's not good for a bunch of things. It's really interesting to see how this will play out.
That is a great point. I've actually never thought about the broadcasters. I've thought about the owners, money. I thought about the players, the ones that play. I thought about the fans, the ones that are affected most, right? But I never even thought about the broadcasters. By the way, can you put up Edmund's comment about the Diet Pepsi and you? Because I think we'd all agree that Parker, especially compared to me, but Parker is a good athlete. I'm a wannabe athlete. I'm also twice his age. But yes, for 2 straight weeks, Parker has been drinking the Pepsi. And yes, Edmund, this is indeed water. I don't want to spill this all over my computer, but yes.
The secret is to have both. And that way you can switch back and forth. You want some flavor, you go Pepsi. You want some, that's the key.
Okay.
So I've got both going.
I can learn from you. Thank you.
But yeah, it's such a weird situation and there's so many things up in the air and it's going to be an exciting March. That is all I will say, because we are going to have what was initially going to be Olympic hockey with NHL players in it, which is sad that we're not getting that, but it'll still be interesting, right? We're going to have a lot of junior players out there, and some other names, and hopefully, we'll be rooting on Canada, and we might have days where, I guess, if the games are in China, that's what, like 15 hours ahead, or is it less than that?
No, that's right. 15 or 16. Yep.
So we might have games at like 9 a.m. here. Right? You wake up, you have a Team Canada game in the morning, you have a Canucks game in the evening. That could be an awesome little day of hockey. So, I mean, the Canucks, think about it. It's January 10th. The Canucks have, 48 games left in the season, right? And there's about 3 months, just over 3 months, call it about 100 days to get those 40 something games in, which 48 games in, which, one every 2 days isn't that crazy. But if more things get pushed, then you start to have this snowball effect where things can get out of hand.
Yeah, no, I agree. And three quick points about this too. They say that the Olympic break is February 6th to 17, but that's when the Olympics are. The Canucks actually don't play between February 1st and 24th. So you're right. They actually have 23 days to make up these 7 games. That's number one. Number 2 is, I forgot what number 2 was. And number 3 is the NHL has also said, because the Canucks, yes, 7 games to make up, but there are actually teams that even have more games to make up. So they've also said that they could expand the regular season by 1 week. It's supposed to end at the end of April. They could go to the first week of May if for some reason concerts, teams playing against each other, all that kind of thing. If they can't fit everyone into that 3-week gap in February, there could be hockey, regular season hockey in May, and not like last year's where wasn't that weird, Parker, where we were still playing regular season games and everyone else is just
they're just meaningless games against Calgary for a week while other people were watching playoff games. I'm sure those were ratings spectacular for Sportsnet.
I'm sure the players loved it. All those things.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to bring up around these postponements that has kind of like irked me a little bit is like, what if, because we've seen what's happened to Montreal, right? Where Montreal's entire team was out. Like they had basically just an AHL, not even an AHL roster, basically playing for a while. And the thing is, if you start to postpone games because of capacity reasons, I feel like you're tempting fate a little bit. Because let's say you postpone 3 or 4 games because of capacity limits, right? Because you don't want to play in front of 50%. Yeah. And then you go out and then you have a COVID outbreak, right? Knock on wood. But let's say, if somewhere like that were to happen, well, now you have 3 more games that you have to fit into that break because you didn't just play them now while you could. That's kind of what seemed weird to me. Was like, man, like you got the opportunity to play the games. But we'll see how she goes.
That's a good point too, because here we're sitting here with the Vancouver Canucks playing 34, as you said, they have 48 to go. But there's the Islanders who've only played 28. Ottawa's only played 29. That means they've missed 11, 12, 13 games and not the 7 that we've missed. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot to get in there. And at least for the Islanders, they can do the whole, play your games after the season's over because they are out of it. But yeah, it's definitely a weird situation.
Yep. I agree.
Do you want to do some previews?
Sure.
All right, let's do some previews, and it starts tomorrow afternoon. I always get caught up with these Eastern road trips, and I was like, oh man, I have a hockey game tonight or tomorrow night at 8:15, and I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna miss the game, and it's like, oh wait, no, I'm not. The game's at 4. We're good. So we have the Canucks and the Panthers.
So you're going tomorrow. Opposite. You're gonna watch the game. You're gonna do your live stream, and then you're gonna go play hockey.
That's correct. Yes, that's the plan.
That's kind of cool, actually.
I like it. Yeah. It's a full evening of hockey. Canucks, Panthers Tuesday tomorrow, or today if you're listening to this the next day, which is I think where most of our plays come from anyways. They are going up against the 23-7-5 Florida Panthers, the top team in the NHL. They are tied with the Tampa Bay Lightning, who we'll get to. They play Thursday. They have been absolutely fantastic, and it is all offense for them because they have 137 goals in 35 games, which is the most in the NHL, averaging 3.9 goals per game.
Jonathan Huberdeau, what can you say? He's on fire right now. He's on fire. He's got 46 points, and he's quickly rocketing up the NHL top scorers list. Yeah, you're right. I heard Boudreau saying that Florida, the way they're so good is they have 4 lines that can score. Obviously, you just rattled off the stats. And Boudreau even admitted they don't want to get into a track meet with Florida. Florida wants you to be up and down the ice because they have the talent to outscore you. And they have some good defensemen and good goaltending. But the Canucks, as good as they've been playing, I agree. I don't think we want to get into a track meet with these guys. This is going to be fun, man. First game back, too. It's crazy.
It could be a very fun game. Of course, now we say that it's going to be 2-1 or something lame. And but yeah, I mean, you look at it, right? And they have so many players who just have the ability to create offense, right? Huberdeau is the obvious one, right? Like you said, 46 points in 35 games. You have guys like Carter Verhaeghe, just under a point a game. Yeah. They have Sam Reinhart, Anthony Duclair, not to mention Alex Barkov. Mackenzie Weegar's playing really well. Yeah. They have Sam Bennett, who's having a bit of a resurgence this year with 11 goals. Then they have in their depth, you're starting to get to guys like Patrick Hornquist, right? Owen Tippett, the young, like there's so many, there's just so much depth. They have Joe Thornton on their team.
Yes.
They have so much depth coming through. Oli Ulevi, we get to see. We probably don't get to see him. Actually,
I knew you were going to say that.
I'm gonna. He's still in his Canucks jersey on NHL.com. I bet he doesn't play.
Yeah, hey, I'm with you.
But yeah, it's they just have so much skill on their team. So many guys who can make plays happen, and that's taking them to top spot in the league.
And I'm sitting there looking at their stats, and you say, "Oh, that's weird how Barkov's sixth on their team in scoring." Oh, that's because he only played 22 games and he has 25 points in those 22 games. So
yeah, it's over a point a game. He's doing fine.
Yes, him, Huberdeau, and Duclair, I think, are the top line, which is pretty crazy. And then you look on their back end, obviously led by Aaron Ekblad. So this is a good team. And then Bobrovsky getting 2/3 of the start so far. A bit better than Spencer Knight, who's a fine goaltender. He's going to be really good. But Bobrovsky having a good year as well. So this is going to be a crazy test to start off the hardest 5-game road trip I think the Canucks have ever been on.
Yeah, it is a brutal swing. And I mean, you look at guys, on the back end too, right? There's 2 goalies playing in this game tomorrow that have the ability to take this from a track meet into, either a low scoring game or a very one-sided game, right?
Yep.
You have Thatcher Demko on the Canucks end, who has been absolutely phenomenal this year, as he has just seemed to consistently be. And then you have, one of the best goalies of this generation on the other side in Sergei Bobrovsky. Yes, he had a bad year. Was it last year or the year? But the last 2 years were pretty bad for him.
Yeah.
But bad by Bobrovsky's standards are a 900 and a 906, right? Not terrible, but not his level. But this year he's been a lot better. He's a 917 on a high-flying offense team. He's played a lot better. And he's a guy who can steal a game if he needs to.
You think so let's talk about the Canucks. Obviously, you have to factor in the opponent, but do you think they're going to come out guns a-blazing, or at least with a lot of pep in their step, because they haven't played since January 1st, beating Seattle? Or do you think this is like game number 2 when they came back against LA? They had the good game against Anaheim, but then they kind of stunk against LA. Do you expect more of that? Or maybe Florida has a lot to do with it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to predict, right? Because I could totally see it going both ways. I can see, okay, they have been resting for a week. They've got some good practices in as a cohesive unit under Boudreau, getting those systems dialed in a little bit more. They're rested. Florida's been playing games. This could be a chance for the Canucks to just go out with speed, take over a game, and keep up with the Panthers. The other side of it is, they haven't played in a week. They're rusty. They haven't moved, right? And there's all these, you really can't tell until the game starts. But if they're going to hang in this game, they're going to have to be going minute 1. Because if they are slow out there, if they have a slow start, Florida will punish you really quick. If you're lazy on your first, second shift, they'll probably score because they have so many guys who can do that. So I think the key for this game for the Canucks is just to not fall behind, right? Stay in it, especially the way we've seen them play lately, where they have been able to battle back in these games. If you go down 1-0, you're okay, because odds are you're going to score some goals too in this game with how good these offenses are. The thing is, you can't go down 2-3-0. You start to really get into scary territory. And you just can't shoot yourself in the foot.
It's crazy too. We beat Seattle 5-2 on New Year's night on our last game. Florida also won 5-2. They beat Montreal on that night. But then since then, they've played 3 games. And they beat Calgary 6-2. So a 6 spot. Then they lost to Dallas in a shootout, 6-5, so 5. And then they beat Carolina, another awesome team, 4-3. So 6 goals here, 5 goals here, 4 goals here. This is going to be fun. It's going to be massive. I'm excited. I'm excited too. I'm
a little scared, but I'm excited. While we're on this, do we want to talk about the lines now, or do we want to do that? I think now, because it's the game that's tomorrow night, sort of our main one that we're previewing here. The Canucks debuting some different lines yesterday. I had it open and then I closed it because I'm very smart. I'll pull it back up.
Sure.
Right here. Okay, let's start from the top. So we have seen in the past Podkolzin, Miller, Garland, right? And I think both of us really liked that line. They were very fun. They were aggressive. Now it's getting a little bit more. They're swapping out Connor Garland for Brock Besser on that unit. So we're getting Podkolzin on the left, Besser on the right, with Miller in the middle. Maybe adding a bit more of a shot option with Besser instead of more of a grind option in Connor Garland.
And the thing is, what was really interesting is before Besser went into COVID protocol, the Besser, Miller, Pearson line was awesome.
Mhm.
They were so good together because Besser was scoring, Miller scoring, and Miller and Pearson were grinding everyone, winning all the board battles. But Miller has played between at least one game between Podkolzin and Hoglander, and then he's practiced with them. I call it like Miller and the two young guys. So I think they like Podkolzin and Miller together. They remember that Besser has good success with Miller, so maybe that's why they're putting these three guys together. And really, if you call this the top line, Parker, we're basically seeing a promotion for Podkolzin to the top line. That's pretty good. Good for him.
Yeah, and I think it's weird. I think all three of these lines sort of have, they're all like they're good second lines. I think it's kind of what the Canucks have. They're rolling like three good second lines here.
Yeah.
The second unit, I guess, that they're not really in order. Elias Pettersson with Niels Hoglander on the right and Tanner Pearson on the left. Give me your thoughts on that one.
Okay, so I've seen PD and Pearson play together before, and they just don't seem to click. I know Hoglander is actually been quite good recently. Both him and Podkolzin have been really good the last little bit under Boudreau. So maybe and Pearson's been actually hot under Boudreau. Can you imagine if Boudreau's putting Pearson and Hoglander with Pettersson to get Pettersson going? That's pretty crazy.
I don't know if you're putting Pearson with anyone to get him going. I think that's a bit of a stretch.
And we got two of our sons on the same line, Pearson and Pettersson.
Yeah, I think look, I really like Pettersson and Hoglander together. I mean, I like Hoglander with anyone. Let's be real. Yeah. And as long as Pearson doesn't get in the way, I think they'll be okay. My fear is, and my fear is always if you put two really high skill guys out and you put a third player out who's not as high skilled, right? And I don't think that's too hard on Tanner Pearson. Sometimes it can drag the other two sort of back a little bit, right? Because they're being sort of led by example, right? They're playing down to the other player instead of trying to get the other player to play up to them.
Right.
I mean, you see it a lot in like beer league, like the games I play, where it's very easy to play down to an opponent, and it's really hard to play up to an opponent. So with Pearson, we'll see if that's the case. But I mean, I guess it's decent. I might have liked Podkolzin there more. But we'll see how that goes.
And we had seen the PPVG line of Pettersson, Podkolzin, Garland, but now none of those guys are on the same line. They're completely all split up. By the way, I hear what you're saying about two skilled guys and a maybe not so skilled guy, and you wanted to elevate him as opposed to be brought down to his level. But who would you say was the best line of the early 2010s for the Canucks?
Yeah, I mean, so you're going to go the Sedins and Burrows is your thought.
Right, and they kind of elevated his game as opposed to him dragging them down, right?
Yeah, but I think Alex Burrows was a very different style than Tanner Pearson, right? I think Burrows had that style of play that could go up because it's all just hard work, right?
Yeah.
Tanner Pearson plays a more, I guess, cerebral game. Like he's trying to be in the right place and receive a pass and try to make plays that way. It doesn't always work, but he doesn't have the foot speed or the battle ability like a Hoglander does.
Sure.
Or the hands that a Pettersson does. But it's more of an IQ game for Pearson, which is fine, and it can work well as long as he's able to get open and possess the puck.
By the way, take away Tanner Pearson's actual, because I think you'd agree he has decent hands. He's not bad in front of the net. Like he's got good offense. So take that offensive instinct away from him, but look at his skating, not so great, and look at how broad he is. That's me in roller hockey. Can you picture me just kind of out there, kind of broad and just kind of? That's me.
You want to be you are the Tanner Pearson without hands.
I'm a poor man's Tanner Pearson. PMP, poor man Pearson. Yeah.
On the third line, we get what I'm assuming is going to be sort of the shutdown line against Florida. Again, I guess you're putting them out against the Huberdeau line at that point. Bo Horvat between Jason Dickinson and Connor Garland.
Yeah. So Horvat and Dickinson, Boudreau really likes these two guys together because before it was Horvat, Dickinson, and Hoglander was actually with them. So I think he likes Dickinson isn't doing anything offensively. It's actually offensive how little he's doing offensively, but on defense, he's actually been quite good. He's been responsible. And maybe that's how he gets more confidence in his game under Boudreaux. His minutes have gone up. So I think that's the pairing you like. And then, yeah, kind of Connor Garland, he works hard. Obviously, he loves his spins. I wouldn't call him a defensive stalwart. So that one's a kind of a mismatch, although I'm sure Horvat would love the offensive potential of Garland, right? With playing with Dickinson.
Yeah, and I think Garland's a guy who can play both ends of the ice just because of his skill, right? He can take pucks away from people, which is really valuable in your own zone. I actually really like the idea of this line, and I think that it leaves you with a really set in stone fourth line that is a fourth line, right? They could have moved Highmore up and then made Dickinson like the 4C or something and done something that way, or moved Mott up and done something that way. But what they've basically said to me here is we are playing these three lines for most of the game, and this fourth line will get 12 minutes, maybe tops. And that fourth line is Juho Lammikko between Matthew Highmore and Tyler Mott.
Our two favorite fourth liners, Mott and Highmore, exactly.
Yeah, that's an excellent fourth line, I think.
Yeah,
well,
there's no chase on.
But it's good.
Yeah, well, there's no chase on.
Well, there's a reason for that, but I honestly I think if Chason wasn't on protocol, I would rather have this fourth line.
I would too.
Than slotting him in.
I would too.
I mean, it's just 3 fourth liners, right? I mean, Tyler Mott is an excellent fourth liner. Matthew Highmore is a pretty good fourth liner. Juho Lammikko's been fine. He hasn't been excellent. He's had some off nights. But I also don't think he has really hurt the team in many ways. I think he has been okay. And that is good enough for me.
You know, so Parker, 3 lines. Yes, in the fourth, we won't talk about the fourth line for a second. The top 9 that you and I have been talking about since the start of the season, since the preseason, these are 3 new combos. We haven't seen this combination of 3 lines yet. They still have not gone with the lines that we have wanted. You know this, right? They still have not gone with Lotto, Horvat, Garland, Hoglander, Dickinson, Pearson, Podkolzin. They still have not gone with that. That's like the only combo they haven't gone with yet. It's crazy. Maybe they won't.
Yeah.
Maybe they won't.
They probably watched us and they're like, screw these guys.
What do they know?
Exactly.
That's why they're just on YouTube.
So I was on this tweet from Thomas Drance, and it gave the little translate tweet button came up. I was like, what would it want me to translate? So I clicked it, and what I see is, did you know that Lammikko is Finnish for the word pond?
I did not know that.
At least that's what this did. It's all it changed. It's translated from Finnish, and it now says it just says pond instead of Lammikko. Translate Lammikko to English. Pond. All right.
Okay, try Juho. I want to see what the modifier is to pond. This could be interesting.
I'm slow at typing. I think it's a name. It's the Finnish variation of John.
John Pond.
John Pond. All right, I'm calling him that from now on. That's excellent.
So the fourth line is Mott and Highmore flanking John Pond.
John Pond.
Okay.
Yes. All right, defense. Ulrich Larson, Tyler Myers. That's the same. Quinn Hughes, Luke Shen. That's the same. Hunt and Pullman. That's the same. Anything on that?
Nothing there. Burrows is the extra. Of course, Kyle Burrows. And then I guess we're still waiting for Travis Hamonic. Bruce Boudreau today said Hamonic did not make the start of the trip at least.
Yeah, he's
injured.
Right?
Yeah, it's not even COVID related. So I don't know what it is. So I think the biggest question is when he comes back, where do you slot him in? Does he become the third pairing guy and you sit Pullman? Does he take a spot next to Hughes? But Shen's playing pretty well there. But I guess we don't have to worry about that till he comes back.
Yeah, he has played a whole 9 games this year.
Wow.
Earning that $3 million.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's go on to the next game, which is Thursday, 4 p.m. You thought the Panthers were a difficult opponent. Well, how about the Tampa Bay Lightning?
I'm thinking, Parker, we could have probably saved ourselves some time and energy. We could have recorded the exact same thing. I mean, said one thing about each Florida and then just repeated it for Tampa, Carolina, Washington, and Nashville.
Wow, really good offensive team, really good goaltender.
Great defenseman, yes.
Also has 51 points, the same as the Florida Panthers.
Yeah.
What's really impressive to me, Tampa Bay is tied for the most points in the league at 51. And if you go by points percentage, I think it's Carolina at the top. Either way,
Okay.
or
Yep.
maybe Colorado because they have only played 32 games. But it's close. I think it's Carolina. They are 23, 9, and 5 with a plus 13 goal differential.
What?
Yeah, they have scored 122 and they've allowed 109. I guess they got blown out a couple of times.
Yeah, when they lose, they get smoked, man.
Yeah, I'm
weird.
really curious about that because they lost 9-3 to the Panthers a week and a half ago.
Okay, well, that can do it.
But they beat the Flyers 7-1 a couple weeks before that.
Yeah, so that
I'm trying to see if there's like a big game that really did it for them, but they've been blown out a couple of times. But yeah, it's a really weird goal differential to me for a team that's performing that well, unless this is just wrong and Google's lying to me, which I wouldn't be too surprised at that point.
So we know that we've seen this team win the cup the last 2 years. We know that is Kucherov hurt, by the way?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay, but with or without Kucherov, they still have Stamkos, Point, Killorn, Palat, Cirelli, Perry, and then on D, Sergachev, McDonough, and of course Victor Hedman, and then they got a guy named Vasilevsky in the back. So this is a pretty good team.
Kucherov's back. He came back on the 7th.
Okay,
and had 2 assists. So he's there, and he's scary.
Oh my gosh!
But yeah, wow. I mean they're such a strong team. I mean, how's Vasilevsky doing this year? He has a nice and easy. Why did it take me to this website?
Yeah, 223. I got
923.
Yep.
He's so good. Yeah, I mean he is going to. It's another game where it'll probably be Demko again. And I imagine we're getting Demko for these 3 games, and then I imagine Halak on the Sunday.
Yep.
And it's going to be just 2 extremely tough games here.
Maybe the Tampa plays Brian Elliott.
I hope so. That would be nice of them. I actually backup goalies, man. I don't know. Do we want to go against backup goalies? That seems like a curse. And then, so if the Lightning was a nice and easy opponent, what if? So we have the Panthers tied for the most points in the league with the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah.
And then, well, if you go by points percentage, well, then the best team in the NHL is the Carolina Hurricanes, who the Canucks play Saturday at 10 a.m. Nice and early. Early games are so weird that I feel like the Canucks are going to blow them out because you cannot trust morning games.
So you're telling me on Tuesday we play against the team with the most points, tied, but fewer games. Then we play against the defending Stanley Cup champions, and then we play against the team with the best points percentage.
Yeah, that's correct.
But you're right about these morning games. You remember in 2012 in January, after the Canucks lost to the Bruins Game 7, they played against them in a Sunday morning game in Boston at 10 a.m., 1 p.m. start. And that was the Cody Hodgson bar down, right? This is the one where we beat them. So you're right. We're going to win because just simply of how early the game is.
Yeah, I think that's stats. Also, you know why Carolina's number 1 in the NHL in points percentage? Well, that's because they are 8-1-1 in their last 10 games.
Same as us.
They are on an absolute heater right now, so a great time to face them. And I mean, they've been winning games handily, right? They've won 5 in a row. No, they lost to the Panthers actually a couple days ago, which indicates how good the Panthers are too. They've had some easier opponents though. I mean, they did lose to the Senators about a month ago. But they beat the Sabres, the Jets, the Flames, the Oilers. The Canucks beat them.
Yeah.
Then they beat the Red Wings, the Kings, the Habs, the Blue Jackets, the Flames. And then they lost to the Panthers. So they are tearing it up right now. The hottest team in the league, really.
Wow. So insert template here. They have the scorers in Aho, Teravainen, Svechnikov, Trocheck, Then they have the great defenseman in, well, I don't know if you call him great, but D'Angelo's been great. Slavin's been great. And of course, their goaltending in Anderson. But didn't we beat them in December?
Yeah, the Canucks beat them just back on December 12th, a 2-1 victory. If I remember correctly, this is the game that the Canucks were the worst team in that game. And they kind of pulled it out, which was good. Jalen Chatfield also on the Carolina Hurricanes.
Oh, interesting. And Ranta played that game, but it's not like he's bad. He only let in 2 goals. And
Ranta's great.
Yeah, he's got great stats. So, okay, another tricky one.
Yep. And then the Canucks followed that up on a little back-to-back against the Washington Capitals. Now, if you don't know where the Washington Capitals are, they are 3rd in the Metro, which you would say, oh, 3rd, that's not a great team. Well, they're 1 point back of the Hurricanes, 1 point back of the Rangers, 2 points back of the Panthers, 2 points back of the Lightning. They are 28-9. They have lost 4 in a row.
Wow.
But I mean, they are so dangerous. Alex Ovechkin continues to do Alex Ovechkin things. How many goals does he have this year? Like 35, 24. Yeah. I was trying to really exaggerate. He has 24 goals this year in 37 games. That's absurd.
So let's very quickly, our template scorers: Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, Shiri, Eller, Wilson, good defenseman, John Carlson, and then their goaltenders, Vanacek and Samsonov, basically even 17 games and 20 games.
Yep. Yeah, they're kind of splitting the load there.
Kind of the weakest goal
was out for a while.
Right. And of the 4 teams, of the 4 that we looked at so far, actually the weakest goaltending of the 4, right? Would you say?
Yeah. And I think that's a shot for the Canucks potentially. It's going to be a wild week. I'm just going to touch on the Predators game the following Tuesday.
Yeah.
Because that way we can do a full road trip prediction.
Wow.
5 games.
Okay.
By the way, if you don't know how Nashville's doing this year, they are the top of the Central Division. They have won 4 in a row. They are 8-1-1 in their last 10 as well.
Okay. Great.
So if you had to make your prediction for these 5 games, all on the road, all against 5 of the top 6 teams by points in the NHL, or it's 5 of the, I don't know, it's around, by points. Yeah, 5 of the top 6 in points in the NHL. Where would you put the Canucks?
I'm boring, man. I'm going 2-2-1, 500 right on the dot.
If the Canucks come out of this 2-2-1, that is excellent.
Yes.
Like that would be a monumental achievement, and it would keep them right in the hunt. It would keep them. I mean, if the Oilers continue to fall, it could have them right on the edge of a playoff spot still.
Yeah.
And then we look at that sort of Olympic break and all these games coming up where they do get a lot easier, right?
Yeah, and a lot of home games too.
Yeah, after this road trip, they come home. They get Florida, St. Louis, kind of tough. Then they get Edmonton, Winnipeg, Calgary, Chicago. Like they get a couple of easier teams, and then they have that Olympic break where they have a bunch of games piled up, most at home and most against fairly beatable teams, except with maybe Toronto.
Yeah, with the Toronto. Exactly. So while we're giving our predictions, you guys, please put yours in the chat. How many points do they get, or what's their record? So I'm saying 2-2-1, and if I had to pick, I'm saying that they win one of the 2. Let's say I'm going to say they actually beat Florida, but they lose to Tampa. I'm going to say they lose to Carolina, but they beat Washington, and then they get a point out of Nashville. So there's my 2-2-1. Parker, what says you?
This one's tough because I'm trying to do I want my fun brain or do I want my realistic brain? But does my realistic brain matter when it's Bruce Boudreau who just wins games?
Yeah. And while you're thinking, you guys, we love your predictions, but your numbers got to add up to 5, okay? Because they're playing 5 games.
They can't go 3-1-2.
Yeah, but it's good. It's good.
Part of me wants to say just 2-3.
Okay.
With one of those wins coming in OT. Which again, I think I'd be fine with if that happened. Part of me wants to say 4-1. I think I'm gonna say they go 2-3. And I'm gonna say they pull out wins. I think they beat Florida too.
Yeah.
I like their odds against Florida. I like their odds against Carolina. And those are gonna be my 2 wins. But if
Okay.
they do better, I will be a very happy guy.
Awesome. So we both got them beating Florida. Then you have them beating Carolina, where I have them beating Washington. Okay. I'll go with that.
Yep. And speaking of other teams, we're the Canucks trying to get in the playoff hunt. They didn't play any games last week, and they are in a pretty okay spot. And that is because the Edmonton Oilers went 0-2 last week. 5 straight losses for the Edmonton Oilers. They lost 4-2 to the Maple Leafs, 4-1 to the Rangers. They don't play again until Saturday, where they get the Sens, and then they get the Panthers.
Thank goodness for the Oilers. But yeah, do you think they're going to fire their coach? Isn't there a press conference tomorrow?
Is
the
there?
Oilers? But
I feel like it'd have been leaked at this point.
yeah. Yeah, and you're right. The rumor, I believe there's a press conference, but the rumor is not about a head coaching change. So I don't know what it would be about.
Yeah. So yeah, they've been struggling. The Canucks remain 3 points back of the Oilers, with the same amount of games played. So now it gets into territory of a catchable team. They are 4 points back of San Jose, who's won a couple of games, but Canucks have 2 games in hand on them. You got to win them though, and they have some
Yep.
tough games coming up here. But the other team, who is basically doing the same swing as the Canucks right now, is the Calgary Flames, who went 0-3 this last week. And they had, like I said, basically the same swing. They started in Florida on Tuesday, same as the Canucks are going to do this Tuesday. They lost 6-2. They go into Tampa on Thursday, just as the Canucks are going to do, and they lose 4-1. And then they went into Carolina on Friday and lost 6-3. So Calgary has been allowing a ton of goals against these 3 very good teams, and not getting goaltending. Vladar and Markstrom were just letting, I think it was Vladar for 2 of these games, for the Thursday, Friday, if I remember correctly. And it did not go well for them. And this is a chance for the Canucks to show that, hey, they might be as good as the Flames. Maybe not as good right now, because the Flames are actually doing really well, but it's a real opportunity to take advantage of these games where the Flames had to go and play these 3 teams, and now the Canucks get to go play in these 3 teams, and no ground was lost at this point.
That's true. That's actually a really good point. With the 2 Alberta teams faltering, and for once the Canucks don't have miles ahead of games played on anyone else, it's actually been nice to see that we are the team that have games to make up. But yeah, I agree with you that Edmonton and Calgary are faltering, but surprisingly, San Jose, LA, and Anaheim, they're not losing as much as I want them to, at least.
Yeah, and I think they're gonna sort of just stick around the middle for most of the year,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we look at San Jose; they're 5-5 in their last 10, right? They're just sort of hovering around a point per game, 39 points in 36 games, which is better than the Canucks, but they're not really trending one way or the other, right? They trended up at the start, they trended down, now they're just sort of hovering around the middle. LA is, they're pulling out wins. I mean, they beat Detroit and they beat the Rangers tonight 3-1.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're staying in the mix. And if the Canucks are going to want to get in the playoffs, they're going to need, the Kings or the Ducks to fall apart here.
Yeah.
Which hasn't really happened yet.
Parker, we love your opinion. Quick opinion on this. I vlogged about this earlier this week as I was trying to find stuff to talk about. If we agree that Nashville, St. Louis, Colorado, and even Minnesota, who's 44 points in only 33 games, if we agree that those 4 teams are going to be pretty tough for the Canucks to catch, that means technically they have to beat one of Winnipeg or Dallas, or just say, hey, 5 teams are coming from the Central. We actually have to finish 3rd in the Pacific. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and that's where it gets tricky, right? Because you probably can, you can't lock them in, but you can say, okay, there's 4 getting in from the Central, most likely,
Yeah.
right? at least. So if there's, you have the top 3 of the Pacific, and then there's one wild card left. So let's say you have Vegas, Calgary, and I don't know, let's keep Anaheim in there for now.
Sure.
So let's say you have Vegas, Anaheim, Calgary. Well, that means you have LA, San Jose, Edmonton, Vancouver, Winnipeg, and Dallas all competing for one playoff spot.
Yep.
That is really tough odds. So what you need to catch the third place team in the Pacific, because it might be easier to get ahead of the Ducks than it might be to be ahead of the Jets by the end of the season, right? Or the Stars. So it's still a tall order, but it is still doable. This team just needs this run that they got them back in the mix. Now they need to, like Bruce says, win the week and win every week. This is going to be their hardest week of the season from here on out. Let's see what they can do.
And if you get to the third spot in the Pacific, then you're actually playing against Anaheim or Calgary as the second Pacific team, as opposed to being the second wild card and playing against the best team in the conference, likely Colorado or St. Louis. So there's a lot of things, or Nashville. There's a lot
to play for.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
Yeah. All right. Do we want to go on to some listener questions?
Sure.
Our favorite time of every week. We got about 15 minutes left. So if you guys want to get your questions in right now, throw them in the chat. We'll read some of them. We'll answer them. And while we wait for you guys to do that, do we want to talk about Patrick Allvin a little bit? I mean, I think we brought him up last week, and we said we don't know anything about him. And then we did lots of research over this last week, hours of deep diving into Patrick Allvin so that we could report the news. And that is that Frank Saravalli said, yep, he's still the main guy. They're probably going to finish up their interviews in the next 10 days, I think is what I heard.
Okay.
So we could have, a new GM potentially in about 2 weeks time. And it still looks like he is the main guy they're looking at.
Yep. I've heard the same. And I did hear also that he would be the second European GM and the first Swedish one. I guess the first one is the guy from Columbus, right? Whose name I can't say. What is that guy? How do you say it?
Kekalainen?
Sure. That
Yarmo?
That guy. Well, that's good. You guys, you're good. You're the pronouncer of the two of us for sure.
Nice.
Yeah. So that'd be cool if he's the second, whatever. Like, I don't care what country he's from, as long as he knows what he's doing. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the big thing. I mean, I still want, someone like McFarland. It seemed like the dream candidate potentially. But hey, we'll see how she goes.
Okay, man. Everyone's asking about Evander Kane.
3, 2, 1. No, thank you. Okay. Moving on. Coach Rob asking if these are the Fry Guys on my shirt. They are. That is why it says Fry Guys. Those cut off the screen. BL Tubes, good question. Would you like to see Jaro Halak traded before his 10th game? And the reasoning behind that is because he hits a bonus if he plays 10 games. You know how big the bonus was at 10 games? It's like half a mil?
Well, no, 1.25.
Oh, it's like the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So the way bonuses work is if you have cap space, then you can pay off the bonus as it happens. Players over 35 are eligible for performance bonuses. Same with players on entry level contracts. So the plan was with Yaroslav Halak, the idea was, okay, we can pay this guy $3 million to be our backup. We don't have $3 million in cap space, but if we make the last $1.5 million easy performance bonuses, then he can get his 1.5 this year, and then we can put the last 1.5 on next year's cap. Because Jim Benning always thinking for the future. And so what happens is one of those bonuses, the big bonus for almost the entire salary for next year, comes from playing 10 games. He has played 8. So if the Canucks can trade him before that hits, then I guess does the bonus get stuck to the team that has him, or does it? Okay.
It's got to be. It's a contract. It's got to be.
Unless it said in a Canucks for the Vancouver Canucks, then he just doesn't get any of it, right?
That's true. That's true.
Although I think he has a full no movement clause, so I think he'd say no if that was the case. Like, no, you're not going to steal $1 million from me. So would I like to see Halak traded? This is tough because I think it's probably, if you can swing it, if you can make that trade happen, it's probably not a bad one to make. Just looking ahead, right?
Mm-hmm.
Saving $1 million off the cap next year. You're already paying Braden Holtby next year to not play for the Canucks on his buyout.
Jake Virtanen,
you're paying to not play. So in that sense, yes. But then who are you putting in as the backup for the rest of this season, right? Demko's not playing 74 games, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the big one, right? And the problem is there's a lot of, GMs like to reward the team if they play well, right? I heard them talking about this on Halford and Bruff. I think it was yesterday. Not yesterday. It would have been Friday's show. And they were talking about how GMs usually only make trades if they think that their players have earned a trade. And he told the story about Kyle Dubas back, I think it was 2018, when they had a bunch of trades lined up to make a big push. And then they had the E-Bug game against Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought they haven't earned it. So he scuttled all those trades. So part of it is, if you're just looking ahead for the future, trading Halak makes sense. But how does it look to the team? If the team has played this way and they're thinking, hey, we're playing really well, maybe add a couple of pieces here, right? Like let's make a push here. We're doing our part. And then he goes out and trades the backup goalie who had a really great game against Columbus. And that's where it gets a little tricky for me.
Yeah, I don't think, for everything that you've said, I agree with you. I don't think you trade him. I don't think you do, because if you are still have any aspirations of making the playoffs, because the trade deadline happens, of course, with a couple months to go still, you need that insurance, because DiPietro's not ready. Silov's not ready. Spencer Martin not ready. That's why they have him on the taxi squad all the time. And so if something happens to Demko and you're still trying to make the playoff spot, you need a goalie with good experience. Of course, that's why other teams might like him. So you do have to entertain offers. But if he's got a no movement clause, this is kind of all for naught, because he's got to waive it. So I don't make that move. I look at the Canucks and I look at their UFAs, and the one, I know this isn't a topic bar, but I think Tyler Mott's name is the one that comes out, because he can be someone who gives a team a great bottom six option for a deep playoff run. And he might be looking at a raise over his $1.25 million, but we can save that for another chat for sure. But all to say, I don't think the Canucks trade Halak. I don't think they should. I
kind of agree. I don't think they do. And it's really a value proposition, right? Because if you think that 1.25 and maybe 1.5, because that last bit of that bonus is a save percentage, right?
Yeah.
Which was 905, which is hittable if he plays okay.
Yeah, he's over that right now. Yeah.
Right. So what do you think they would even get for a guy like Halak, right? He probably will, he has a no movement clause. So this is if he says yes to going to a team, I mean, what are they getting? Like maybe a third, fourth, maybe.
Yeah, I was thinking that third. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So a nice addition, but in the long term, it's probably negligible, right? Yeah. Where it really counts is, do you want to prevent that 1.25, maybe $1.5 million from being on your books next year, when they do have to, sign a couple of big contracts? And the cap, I think the cap's going up next year, right? Like 1 million, I think, which is almost nothing. And the Canucks get the Luongo recapture off the books, which will be nice. But
yes,
I mean, this almost, this and the Holtby buyout basically negates that anyways. So it is tricky. I wouldn't be surprised either way. But I think you'd have to get a goalie back, right? Like you'd have to get the other team's worst backup in return. Because I don't think you're putting DiPietro in.
Right. I agree. Do you think Rutherford came here and the first day on his job, he opens up his little salary cap spreadsheet and he goes, "What the heck?
Yeah. Why does Halak have a no move? Although
Why are we paying Holtby and Vertanen 2.5 million to combine next year?"
it is pretty common though that teams will give veterans no movement clauses, right? Just like, and especially on a 1-year deal, like who cares, right? They're basically saying, "Hey, come play for us for the year. We won't trade you at the trade deadline," right? That's basically what the no movement gets them. And Halak wanted to come here and not want to have to move around throughout the year. And I mean, we had the same thing with Edler, right? That's why Edler was getting no moves, because he just wanted to stay here. And it's sort of the same situation. So I get why the no move was there, but I wouldn't be too surprised if they try to get around it.
So Parker, trivia time. I think Gillis and to some extent Benning were notorious for giving out these no moves. Aside from Halak, there's only 3 players that have either no move or no trade. And I'll give you a hint: 1 forward and 2 defensemen. Do you want to take a guess without looking?
Myers.
Yep.
OEL.
Yep.
The forward though, Tanner Pearson.
Very good. Very good.
Nice.
Yeah. Awesome. Nicely done.
Why is Tanner Pearson? You ruined my night.
I did this on purpose, brother.
Tanner Pearson. It's just a.
So he's got a full no trade this year, and then next year he's got
only
teams.
7 teams next year. Okay, so next year he's very tradable, which is good. Jeez. I remember that. I remember making the video when he got signed. I was like, 3.25 is too much. 3 years is too much, and a no trade makes no sense. And that's where I was on that, because that is silly.
Yeah. Gosh, we spent 10 minutes talking about Halak, which is fine, but now there's a bunch of questions. Take your pick, man.
Oh, I haven't been reading.
Me neither.
Oh man. Arsenal, what do you think teams would play for Halak and Mott? I like the Mott angle, because Tyler Mott, the trade deadline's still, is it March this year?
Yeah, early March,
April.
I think.
NHL trade deadline.
I'm going with early to mid-March.
Oh, it doesn't tell you. March 21st. It's late.
Oh, wow.
March 21st, 3 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, that's really late. That's almost the end of the year. It's like a month before.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, a guy like Tyler Mott, I think is the ideal trade piece at the trade deadline, right? My worry about Tyler Mott is I think we like him more than anyone else will.
Yeah, and that's usually the case. Yep.
Yeah. Unless you can convince him to do the whole UFA thing, which never happens. Everyone's like, "Oh, just trade him and then sign him in the offseason." It never works.
No.
You never see it. If they could somehow sell that would be excellent, because I really like Tyler Mott here. And I mean, if you just say, "Hey, we'll give you, $2 million next year to come back," that would be good. What would they get for him?
Does he fetch what Halak fetches, a 3rd rounder?
I think you shoot higher.
2nd rounder.
Yeah, I mean, you look at guys like you got guys like Blake Coleman getting first round picks in return as a rental, right? Sure, he's lower caliber than that, but I think a second should be at the trade deadline for a guy who can go kill penalties. Was excellent in the bubble, right? Like, showed that he can play playoff hockey. I think they should be able to fetch something for Tyler Mott. Especially if you're not going to be able to re-sign him. Then I think he's definitely a good trade piece potentially.
What did can you type faster than I do? Can you type in what Barclay Goodrow trade? Because I think he got first.
Yeah, he got a that was the other trade. Traded to Lightning, 1st round pick.
Wow.
And Greco. And I think there was a
rounder.
And it was Goodrow and a 3rd for a 1st, and Anthony Greco, who is nothing. Like, he's played 1 NHL game and he's 28 years old. So basically a 1st and a 3rd, or Goodrow and a 3rd got a 1st. But hey, I mean, if you could do Mott and a third, for a first, then you're taking that and running, right? And that moves you up. That probably moves you up a total of about 40 picks or so in the draft, 45 picks.
Yeah.
In that case, I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, and Arsenal said this in the chat just right there. Last year's trade deadline prices were so high. I agree. I remember seeing some of those trade deadline deals, and yeah, weird year last year, obviously, but man,
All right. Do you want to take one more?
sure.
Did you see it? It's time for you to pick one.
Okay, I'll pick. Oh no, we should do one about the Canucks, right?
Probably.
I sorry, I'm not very prepared.
That's okay. Edmund asks, are you more worried about what are you worried about what Rutherford or ex new GM will do? I personally am. I just remember any time for the last bunch of years, whenever it would pop up and it would say, sounds like the Canucks are making a trade, my mind never went, all right, let's see what's going on. Let's see what they're trying to do to improve the team. It is, oh no, please don't be bad. Please, just don't be too bad. And look, Benning made some good trades. Benning made some iffy trades. I just didn't trust Jim Benning. And it's going to take me a long time for those wounds to heal and be able to trust again.
Yeah. Jim Benning's trade history better when it was not the deadline. The JT Miller trade, which we like, that happened at the draft, not at the deadline. And there are many more examples like that. I'm sure that Pearson for Goodbranson, that wasn't at the deadline. I think that was in December, if memory serves correctly.
Right.
Yeah. So, and the Levo trade at the time, which was good. But then I only can remember one trade deadline where I thought he did really well. And that was at the time, I thought it was great when he shipped out Hansen and Burrows, two declining assets for Godobin and Dahlin that came in, Dahlin. But
right. And then he traded Dahlin for Linus Karlsson.
Okay, thanks for so Rutherford has been saying the right things. He has been saying he's not going to trade, he's not going to do rentals because he doesn't want to give away any picks or prospects. So if you take him at his word, I like that. We've also seen his history though, but those are Pittsburgh teams that were ready to win now, as opposed to the Canucks, who I think you got to still look 2 or 3 years away.
I will say Linus Karlsson has 23 points in 29 games in the SHL this year.
Okay.
So good for him. He's improving. Hopefully he's eventually can play an NHL game.
Yes.
Okay. With that, we're going to wrap up. Thank you guys very much.
By the way, you know why it's scary? Because his name is Linus Karlsson.
Fair. Okay. With that, we are going to wrap up. Thank you guys very much for joining us. Big week, 4 Canucks games this week. And if you want to catch up on those games after they happen, you can go to either of our channels. Mine is Parker's Pucks. His is Canuck Clay. I do a stream after every game. Clay makes videos. Clay does some live streams during the week. We do a bunch of stuff. We're not just here on Mondays. We're doing this all the time, except this last week. I did nothing this last week because nothing happened. You can follow us on Twitter. There's some links in the description. Just go click those if you want. If you missed any part of the show, you can rewind here on YouTube. Or you can find on your favorite podcast platform. And if you listen on your favorite podcast platform, that helps us a lot. It moves us up the rankings, especially if it's on Apple Podcasts, which is really cool for us because we like seeing those numbers on the charts go up, which is fun. Clay, any parting words for the night?
Just excited for hockey. As tough as this road trip's going to be, that we spent 40 minutes detailing after a 13-game break in December, a 13-day break, excuse me, where we missed 5 games, another 11-day break, missing another 2. This is going to be fun. Finally. It
sure is. And I want to end this by saying happy birthday to Tobias Reeder, who single-handedly ruined the Edmonton Oilers season a few years ago because he didn't score a goal. And with that, have a good night. And we will see you next week.